Imagine this: you stand at the threshold of a bedroom, where every expectation you ever absorbed about love, relationships, and age trembles on the verge of collapse. The light is low, and you sense desire crackling in the air. You, yes, you, are the axis of tension, the center of this unexplored territory. Patterns from your past relationships press close, whispering their warnings. Suddenly, you are aware, this isn't just about attraction or youthful energy. This is about breaking free from the stale psychology of marriage, the tired echoes of appropriate and stable, and the suffocating web of habits that make spouses strangers. Now, imagine you are the mature woman. Age is not a number, it's a collection of wounds, triumphs, betrayals, and secret dreams. You taste liberation in the phenomenal thrill of a younger partner, his curiosity, his impulsiveness, his rough edges that your former lovers sanded smooth with predictability. Suddenly, your heart rattles in your chest, not out of fear, but out of an intoxicating sense of possibility. You crave more than connection. You want to rewrite the codes, to decode the psychology of attraction and confidence, to let your hand rest on the untamed pulse of youthful desire. Every molecule of communication between you and him is charged, volatile, electric. You may feel yourself hovering between exultation and guilt, ecstasy and alienation. Society clings to its own tired scripts: she's desperate, he's using her, it'll never last. They reduce you to caricatures: cougar, boy toy, adulterer, cheater, harlot, fool. These are the roles they force you to play in their drama, with no script for real longing, the ache of loneliness, or the relief of being seen again, truly seen. Is it emotional cheating if your whole body yearns for a kind of communication your marriage never provided? What if trust never flowed in your marriage, only routine? If you are honest with yourself, doubt shivers through you. Is wanting more an act of adultery, or an act of salvation? Stop. Right here. Feel the confusion thrumming in your veins. The world wants you uncertain, wants you ashamed. But there, in the glint of a younger lover's eyes, is the first taste of freedom, however dangerous, however raw. Strip away the myths. They will shout that age defines intimacy limits, that older love must bow to gravity and consensus reality. But you know better. You've tasted stale relationships, the withered trust of marriages held together by habit and mutual inertia. You've spent countless nights replaying conversations with spouses who stopped seeing you years ago. Now, you stand in front of a man whose innocence slashes through your cynicism. You study his body language, the hungriness in his gaze, the open, eager hand. You recognize his confidence, raw and awkward, in the way he says your name. Psychology tells you desire prefers novelty, that our brains delight in risk. But this is more than dopamine. This is the clash of experience and naivete, wisdom and fire, the brute force of contrast. You are not returning to adolescence but vaulting over former thinking errors. You crave meaning. He craves initiation. The world obsesses over the fear of cheating, of women leaving their marriages for youth, of emotional affairs that begin with texts and escalate into damage. None of that matches the internal landscape, the terrain of confusion and anticipation that only you will ever truly cross. Perhaps your spouse suspects. You see suspicion creep into his eyes, feel the shift in his questions. Trust, always fragile, sours into resentment, neither of you daring to say the word divorce, though you both sometimes dream of it for the silence it promises. Beneath your calm exterior, beneath the practiced smile when your partner speaks, lies the storm. You are the architect of secrets, the heroine of your own psychological odyssey. What is cheating? Is it the exchange of fluids or the leak of dreams, the fantasy that leaves your marriage brittle and exposed? Is it adultery if you never touch, or is it worse, an emotional seduction, a telepathic betrayal? You sense yourself suspended between archetypes, between the Freudian hunger for lost youth and the Jungian yearning for spiritual integration. This is the first law of the peculiar relationship: nothing is what it seems. Every communication is a paradox, words are both a shield and a blade. You are both prey and predator, teacher and disciple. You are hungry, and at last, you feel alive. Let's talk about attraction. Not the artificial performance sold in magazines or the monotonous grind of passionless unions. This is deeper, a psychological resonance that buzzes between mature woman and younger man. He brings urgency and chaos, you bring reflection and depth. Dichotomy is your drug. He terrifies you with his blunt honesty, his lack of psychological walls, his refusal to play the tired games that shaped your previous relationships. Yet his youth is not innocence, it's ignorance for what you can do with it. You see his uncertainty, his searching glances, and it awakens a confidence that once felt extinct. Suddenly, all those years of learning from failed marriages, failed expectations, cheating, trust lost and rebuilt, become your secret reserve of power. You read his emotions not just in words, but in how his voice stumbles, how his gestures tremble with unspoken admiration. But every encounter carries a shadow. The moment he leaves, you remember isolation, that strange cocktail of shame and hope. Are you using him as a safety valve, a distraction from your own uncertainties? Or is he using you, siphoning wisdom and stability because the young women in his orbit exhaust him with drama and confusion? Psychology calls this a transference, a projection of lost parental attention, the urge to relive adolescence with fewer mistakes. You catch yourself wondering whose script you're following. Freud would call it the return of the repressed, Jung would name it shadow work. Your friends judge in whispers. The world's gaze burns, not because of your happiness, but because you threaten the order of things. Women are not meant to lead desire, to set the rhythm, to expect satisfaction. You are breaking rules that never served you. You are no longer a spouse stuck in emotional winter, you are a force, a hurricane in the dark. Each encounter drags you through confusion and leaves you blinking in the clarity of self-discovery. You know you can never go back to who you were. Now, you see the cost. Not just in social capital, but in the habits you must break. The habit of apology, for wanting. The habit of shrinking, when your laughter threatens to fill a room. The habit of focusing on his pleasure over your own, a relic of older relationships and silent marriages. Here, you must learn ruthless communication, to name your desire without shame, to set boundaries without explanation. You feel your emotions, raw, jagged, alive, surging to the surface. In his arms, you experience clarity and chaos. Sure, he idolizes you, sure, he may cheat, or stray, or wake up one day and call you old. But these fears are echoes, not prophecies. You are aware of psychology's cruel paradox, the more you fear loss, the faster it arrives. Your task is to burn cleanly, to risk trust again, to watch your doubts and still move forward. The thinking errors of the past, believing love must be safe, or that attraction fades with age, have no place here. Every night you return to your own bed, you weigh the intensity of the rendezvous against the weight of your solitude. Dare you dissolve your marriage, risk your reputation, shatter the last defenses of a life built on predictability? Is it adultery to want to feel essential again? Is it cheating to want more than a spouse's tolerance for your flaws? You taste the bitterness of indecision, but it is better than the numbness of regret. In breaking habits, you build confidence. You let go of societal expectations, choosing instead to expose your own raw desires. You unlock courage, not in bravado, but in small acts, a confession, a demand, the laughter that bubbles up even in serious conversations. He brings out the woman who was buried under layers of responsibility, who wants to feel trust pulsing, not just promised. You realize now, you are not looking for anyone's permission. You are searching for meaning. And you are finally willing to risk everything just to experience yourself, transformed. He asks you why you chose him. The answer splinters inside your mouth, too complex for one word. You want to tell him it's not about youth or looks, it's about the freedom to start anew, to unlearn the pain of old relationships, to rethink communication, attraction, marriage, and what it means to be seen. He thinks you are a teacher, a wise lover, but you are also a student, relearning the body, relearning touch, relearning the way confidence grows in the ruins of loss. With every secret meeting, each brush of fingers, you resurrect an old self, bold, unapologetic, but awake to your own fragility. Yet, you see his fear too. He worries you will outgrow him, discard him as quickly as you claimed him. You know this fear, it's the same one that haunted you when your spouse grew cold, the same uncertainty that made every small betrayal feel like the end of the world. Through him, you re-experience vulnerability, not as a curse, but as a necessary pain, a realignment of old wounds and new hope. Divorce hovers, a specter at the edge of consciousness. Perhaps it waits in your own home, in a kitchen where communication is clipped, where trust is exhausted, where habits grind meaning down to dust. Or maybe it has already arrived, and this younger lover is not an escape but a salve for wounds neither age nor wisdom could heal. You push past society's condemnation, realizing that truth is personal and always unfinished. Each night, you ask yourself, what lives in the silence after the sex, after the laughter, after the world's noise dies down? Are you running toward freedom, or away from your fears? The psychology of desire offers no easy answers, but the search, painful, relentless, is what keeps you alive. And so, you continue. Because in this rare space, with all illusions torn away, you discover something sacred, something violent, and something absolutely your own. Listen closely to your pulse pounding in the darkness, your own blood reminding you that time is both friend and enemy. In the eyes of your younger partner, you sense two hungers, one for the untamed depth of your experience, and one for the uncontrollable chaos he wishes you would bring. His hands seek your knowledge, his tongue craves your stories, but none of this erases the strange divide. You remember pain he hasn't yet imagined, and he still dreams of futures you know will never arrive. The allure is not in youth alone, but in what each brings out of the other, the collision of unfinished business and reckless hope. Your body, marked by years, becomes a text for him to study, each scar, each sigh, each habit of hesitation. He tries to decode your confidence. Watches to see if you flinch at the name society calls you. Watches your gaze, searching for the flicker of doubt. But you are learning to wear your power without apology. Old thinking errors, like believing passion is for the young, fall away with each gasp, each needy touch that reconfigures what desire means. When he presses his lips to your shoulder, he whispers, "Teach me," and you understand he does not simply mean sex. He wants the secret passage out of his own confusion, the clarity to recognize the difference between lust and genuine connection. Most nights, you are the mirror he holds up to his potential. You watch him test boundaries, dare tenderness, trip over his own fear of not being enough. In the cycle of communication, your teasing, his earnestness, trust starts to grow in strange new soil. You no longer shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's vision. You are full, extravagant, unpredictable. And he is learning, through your unbroken stare, that love is never blueprint. It must be built from the shrapnel of old disappointments and the sovereignty of new choices. Fear has always haunted you, fear of discovery, of judgment, of losing everything that held your world together. But now fear morphs into fuel, sharpens your senses. Your marriage was constructed on cautious steps, on the habit of swallowing your true voice to maintain peace. With him, you are all fire, illogical, magnificent, burning through every worn-out habit. The pain of rejection sits close, always threatening to drag you back to the corrosive silence of your married bed. In the newness of his arms, you remember that desire is a force, neither moral nor polite, but raw and elemental. Sometimes, confusion overtakes you. His moods are storms, your own insecurities flare up. You ask yourself if you are a fool for starting over, if the ache of being misunderstood is worse than the ache of being unseen. Jealousy drips like venom. Will he tire of you? Will you exhaust him with standards and stories rooted in years he never lived? Each night is a roll of the dice, trust pitted against suspicion, comfort against risk. You measure every word, check for thinking errors, search for the trapdoors in your own reasoning. Is it worth it? The habit of self-doubt claws at you. The old specter of not enough, not young enough, not flexible enough, not worthy enough. But in the friction, you find clarity. You name your needs. You study his confusion as a mirror of your own. This awareness is liberation, the recognition that pain is a sign of transformation, not failure. The psychology of attraction reveals that uncertainty is where new confidence is born. You let go of needing to be right. You learn to just be. In the stillness after desire, you confront the chasms that separate woman from girl, initiation from dependency. This relationship forces you to invent new forms of communication, new rituals to replace the tired games of marriage. Gone is the silent cold shoulder, the passive retreat to separate beds. Here, you demand truth, not as a weapon but as a foundation. He is not always ready, he sometimes recoils from your intensity, your refusal to be placated. You see him struggling, his emotions raw, unpracticed in the delicate art of mutual vulnerability. Sometimes, you envy his certainty. The confidence of a man who believes he has decades left to remake his life. But then you remember, you possess the wisdom of endings, the advantage of survival. You can name what you want, marriage or companionship, adventure or commitment, while he is still learning to decipher his own desires. In that gap, trust becomes your most radical act. You confess to old wounds, the hidden injuries from years spent in the shadow of another's needs. He confesses to fears you once dismissed as childish. It is communion without a script. The world outside your door cannot fathom this. They believe in the story of the older woman as an abuser of youth or as desperate for affirmation. They never see the alchemy, the way you each push the other toward growth, the way communication sometimes triggers old hurts but also carves new openings for light to enter. Habits disappear, replaced by fresh rituals, truth spoken instead of swallowed, tears shed instead of washed away unseen. The risk is real. But so, finally, is the connection. You wake one morning to silence and recognize it as sacred, not empty. The old marriage felt like a cage, doors heavy with unspoken resentment, windows painted shut with secrets, betrayal, and passive cheating. The younger lover is a window that's flung open, the air is cold and unfiltered, but honest. You watch the way he looks at you, sometimes in awe, sometimes in confusion, and you realize you have forced yourself into clarity. Trust, you see now, must be chosen again and again, not just in marriage or adultery, but in every word and touch. You ask yourself if you are prepared for loss. Nothing here is guaranteed, not communication, not sexual frequency, not even the illusion of permanence. Sometimes you miss your spouse's predictability, the strange security found even in discontent. Other days, you dread the thought of ever returning to the dull ache of muted needs, of love shrunk by routine. The tension between freedom and nostalgia is its own kind of pain, but one you would choose again and again for the sharp taste of real emotion. In the mirror, you see a face marked by both survival and emergence. The wounds of old infidelities and divorces have not disappeared, but they no longer define you. You wear your complexity as armor, and your lover learns to touch you there, with reverence. This is the new psychology, a relationship that asks for more than habits and apologies. You are finally building intimacy not on the ghosts of your past, but on the fresh architecture of choice. He asks you to teach him, and you hesitate. Not because you doubt his capacity to learn, but because you recognize the weight of what you hold, decades of testing, failing, reconciling, rebuilding trust after betrayal. You wonder if it's even fair to ask this boy man to shoulder the debris of your previous lives. But then you see his desire, not just for your body, but for your stories, your philosophies, the logic of your survival. You answer him, not in lectures, but with practiced honesty. This is what I need. This is what hurts. This is what love means to me. You abandon the habit of pretending. You confess your flaws, your jealousy, your terror, your need for space, as badges of fierce self-awareness. He surprises you by matching your vulnerability, sometimes even outpacing it. "No woman my age talks like this," he marvels. In that moment, you understand that confidence is not simply built in the gym or bought with beauty products, it is the byproduct of scars, scars that reveal the map of every place you've ever been lost. The alchemy is not guaranteed. Some days, you feel him slipping away, seduced by more familiar ground, the uncomplicated ignorance of youth, the seamless, undemanding affection that dominated his earlier relationships. But always, he returns, drawn by the communication you offer, the explicit, uncomfortable truth that turns lust into something almost holy. You sense the danger, the asymmetry. He has more time, you have more wisdom. The pain of this awareness does not vanish, it forms the crucible in which real intimacy is forged. You accept that trust and understanding require daily work. Yet, despite the pain, you would not trade this clarity for any numbness of habit or safety of old excuses. Jealousy is your silent companion in these nights, a low ache that reminds you how much is at stake. You catch yourself peering into the future, trying to map out timelines, worrying about how long passion can survive against the advancing army of doubt. Each glance at the younger partner is a test. Will he drift toward someone his age, seduced by the speed of youth, pulled back into habits of convenience and simple attraction? The psychology of age difference gnaws at you. Youth promises adventure, but also unpredictability. You rehearse confrontations in your mind, seek reassurance in his touches, his words. You know the dangers of emotional cheating, of secrets carried in digital messages and half-truths. The boundary between honesty and manipulation is razor-thin. You have lived through marriages shadowed by betrayal, where cheating was an answer to unasked questions, and you learned that relationships built on denial inevitably crumble. Now, you demand more. Trust is not a luxury, it is the only thing holding the storm at bay. He tries to reassure you, sometimes fumbling. His own confidence is an act, a show for others who suspect, judge, and quietly envy. You see through him, recognize his emotional traps, challenge him to rise above the ghostly pull of familiar thinking errors. You are both tested, both battered by the struggle to communicate beyond habit and history. In the uncertainty, you find strength. The pain of not knowing, of risking everything for moments of connection, makes you fierce and unyielding. You refuse to wither in the chill of what-ifs. You meet every uncertainty head-on. And then comes the quiet revolution, the moment you realize you no longer crave validation from old systems, old marriages, or tired social scripts. You are rewriting the story of attraction, of what it means to be a woman who wants, openly, ravenously. The younger man responds, sometimes stumbling backward, sometimes leaping forward in awe and fear. You set the rules here. Communication is stark, emotions are unpacked, with no room for guilty half-measures. He confesses things he never told anyone, about his parents' mistakes, his habits of running when things get hard, his past relationships crumbling under the weight of superficiality. You listen, not just with patience, but with the authority born of surviving your own tragedies. Your confidence grows, not as arrogance, but as a quiet refusal to shrink. The world insists on diminishing women who love past the acceptable age, who divorce, who demand something more than mere survival. Your relationship becomes a thinking experiment. Every kiss, every touch, every silence is an interrogation of what actually matters: trust, honesty, desire, raw emotion. You talk about divorce as a tool for freedom, not as a scarlet letter. Adultery is reframed, not just violation, but a misguided search for connection. You speak openly about sexual habits, about the sacrifices made for intimacy, about the cost of understanding another's body beyond rote expectation. You stop hiding. The pain of exposure transforms into power. You learn to celebrate pain, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you recognize it as the price of profound change. Pain is proof you lived, proof you risked, proof you refused the easy way out. Your lover watches your transformation with a mix of reverence and terror. He has never seen a woman unravel and rebuild in real time. You speak of old marriages, each ending not as a failure, but as a necessary breaking of chains. Divorce, you assert, is not an end but the midpoint between numbness and awakening. He hears your story about emotional cheating, about the subtle betrayals you endured, years starved for touch, nights spent in longing so dense you could barely breathe. You confess to habits you broke, the habit of fearing rejection, the habit of settling for half-loves, the habit of burying desire under layers of politeness. He absorbs these lessons, not always gracefully, but always eagerly. Together, you forge an alliance built on radical communication, no topic too taboo, no desire too sacred to name. Sometimes, the world intrudes, whispers in the grocery store, snickers at gatherings, the hint of pity in friends' voices. You wear these judgments as armor. Your confidence is the rebellion. You know who you are, and you refuse to inhabit anyone else's story now. Every conversation with him is both a battle and a bomb, breaking down old structures and erecting new sanctuaries of understanding. This is not a story of easy victories. Even in the warmth of his embrace, there are days when loneliness presses down, when the magnitude of what you have left behind, marriage, comfort, predictable patterns, threatens to suffocate your newfound courage. Your emotions run wild, some days you are volcanic, other days disintegrate in self-doubt. You grapple with the reality that trust is always conditional, that spouses betray, that partners, young or old, can lose themselves in fantasy and forget you exist. You refuse the habit of idealization, blend hope with realism, use street philosophy to parse the difference between love and dependency. The conversations you share are brief but blistering. Do you love me, or do you love what I give you? It is a question neither spouse nor lover ever answered fully. You stand your ground, inviting discomfort, forcing him to confront the truth about his motives, his thinking errors, his own desire to escape pain in the arms of someone wiser, stronger. Yet in this crucible, strength emerges. Confidence is found not in perfection, but in perseverance. You watch him struggle, absorb his confusion, refuse to let his insecurities become yours. You become mentor and challenger. Your relationship is training, a sharpening, cutting away everything artificial, exposing the bones beneath. Pain remains, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull. But you are no longer defined by avoidance. You have accepted responsibility for your happiness, and he is learning to do the same. Your friends do not understand. Some pity you, some envy you, some fear the mirror you've become, reflecting the price of honesty, the cost of leaving marriages that stifle rather than nurture. You answer their concerns with psychology, not platitudes. We are built for evolution, not maintenance. Habits that chain us to comfort eventually starve us of meaning. Attraction dies in the absence of risk, of emotional honesty. Your younger lover, for all his volatility, is risk incarnate. He keeps you awake, alive to every flicker of possibility and pain. You analyze each fight, each moment of misunderstanding, not for its drama but for its revelations. Communication becomes your laboratory. You probe the places trust is brittle, uncover the invisible scars, his and yours. You do not settle for peace built on silence. You demand clarity, even when it wounds. Tell me the truth, even if it ends us. It is a radical departure from the habits of your past lives, where marriage was a series of polite evasions, where cheating was never discussed openly. Real love, you discover, requires the constant risking of the self. You stop asking for guarantees. Each day is a negotiation of needs, a balancing of hope and realism. And through the journey, despite the confusion and rejection, you find yourself growing not just older, but deeper, marked by pain, yes, but not conquered by it. You are living proof that relationships demand courage, even when the outcome remains uncertain. You've grown used to the shock in his eyes whenever you speak your truth without hesitation. For him, vulnerability was a tactic, not a habit, a weapon to win affection, not a foundation for real intimacy. But there is no room for games in your relationship. You insist that communication be surgical, stripping away everything inauthentic. He learns what marriages and affairs never taught him, that attraction is sustained by honesty, not performance. You pull him into uncomfortable conversations. What scares you most about us? Sometimes the answers hurt, but pain is the cost of clarity. You don't coddle his insecurities or bleach your desires for his comfort. You let your emotions rise and fall in sharp, visible waves. He finds this terrifying and thrilling. He is unaccustomed to a woman who names rejection as calmly as she names pleasure, who admits uncertainty without erasing hope. This is your gift to him, a crash course in the habits of transparency, the psychology of emotional risk. His confidence blooms with every challenge you deliver, because he learns intimacy is earned, not taken for granted. Some nights, you both dissolve into laughter over the absurdity of your situation, the world's labels, the judgments, the melodramas of age difference and forbidden love. You let those voices become a kind of background static. Together, you develop your own language, your own rituals. It's not about being seen as a power couple or breaking some cultural rule. It's about two imperfect, restless people finding shelter and provocation in each other's arms. A shelter built from truth, not tradition. There are weeks when everything feels fragile, the future, your sense of self, your ability to trust in this connection. Old doubts return. Will he grow bored? Will you retreat to the safety of numbness, sabotaging what is alive out of fear? You've watched too many couples, married and unmarried, become experts at disappointment, partners in mutual avoidance. You refuse to join them. If it ends, you want it to end in fire, not ashes. Together, you reject the habits of emotional cheating and silent withdrawal. You establish boundaries. If you crave someone else, tell me. If you want to leave, say so. He is shocked by your candor, but slowly adopts this ethic. Fewer secrets, fewer landmines. And with every confession, the battlefield of your insecurities becomes less dangerous, more navigable. You realize that trust lost in earlier marriages, in old cycles of adultery and denial, can be rebuilt, but only if both parties are ruthless about their own motives. You imagine a future not defined by age or by public approval, but by how bravely you communicate. The world may not understand, but understanding is not your goal, liberation is. You break yourself open, and with every risk taken, every mistake admitted, you become the woman you were always meant to be. Even your pain feels noble, evidence of having lived, having dared, having chosen truth instead of comfort. One night, he asks about your first marriage. You hesitate, not from shame, but from the weight of memory. You remember habits of silence, the way communication died, rescue attempts slow and suffocating. You remember discovering your spouse's emotional affair, the slow bleed of trust, the way you both clung to routine long past the death of genuine intimacy. You answer, we lost each other to our own habits, not to someone else. He listens, really listens, wondering, perhaps, if he is doomed to the same fate. You tell him about your divorce, about the paradoxical relief and sorrow, the chaos and sudden clarity. You admit the secret. You feared a future where your pain was ignored, your needs unspoken, your sexuality dismissed as a fading luxury. That fear pushed you toward transformation. You learned to extract meaning from heartbreak, to build boundaries from betrayal. He holds your hand, and for the first time, you feel seen, not as someone's partner, not as an aging lover, but as a whole being who survived, changed, and demanded more. Through your story, he sees the core, that marriages without communication decay into cheating, traps of self-denial, elaborate performances of love. He thanks you for your honesty, and with that, a new kind of trust flickers to life. The conversation is not easy, but it's real. You sense you will never again accept less than this. You have learned, painfully, that love without truth is ruin. A new rhythm develops between you, cycles of tension and tenderness, confrontation and repair. The drama is not in fighting itself, but in what the fights reveal. You are no longer a woman trained to keep peace at all costs. You let arguments happen, not as proof of failure, but as evidence of real intimacy. Every time old habits return, the urge to placate, to apologize for taking up space, you catch yourself. You choose to stay present, even in discomfort. He surprises you. Sometimes, he is the one who initiates the hard questions, who refuses to let misunderstanding settle into poison. You see him unlearning what the world taught him about age, power, and gender roles in relationships. You see yourself unlearning the habit of guarding, of treating trust as a bet rather than a principle. Neither of you is perfect, but the sum of your effort is something radical. You are co-creating a relationship not dictated by scripts, not bound by the ghost rules of marriage, not policed by the threat of divorce or emotional cheating. You recognize courage in these moments, not because fear is absent, but because you refuse to let it make your choices. Your attraction is sharper, your emotions more authentic. Even in chaos, you hold each other accountable to honesty. The pain of vulnerability softens into something else, respect. And respect feeds love in a way sex alone never could. And so you arrive, battered by experience, luminous with insight, burning brighter for every risk you have taken. You look at your younger lover and see not proof that you are still desirable, but proof that you can redraw the map of your life anytime you choose. The peculiarities of this relationship are your freedom, not your shame. Together, you have written new rules, rules that honor age and youth, wisdom and uncertainty, rules that accept pain as the price for real belonging. You are no longer hiding. No longer shrinking. You have lived the full arc, from confusion and frustration, through pain and rejection, to the raw power of self-understanding. You have retaught yourself how to want, how to communicate, how to trust without blindness. The world may never approve, old friends may drift away, habits will die hard, sometimes new ones break your heart. But you have arrived in the one place cliché can never find you, the edge of your own becoming. Transformation is not gentle. It is a deliberate, defiant act. Stand here, in this darkness, and realize, you are finally, fiercely, free.